really like the idea that you can think too hard about or read too much into something, particularly when that something is entertainment. Yes, there are lots of movies and TV shows and books and music that aren't meant to be regarded for any kind of thematic depth, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. For me, the best frivolous entertainments are the ones that actually do hold up if and when you take a deeper look at them. In fact, I think that's usually the reason why the ones that endure do endure. With that in mind, let's talk about the Beverly Hillbillies. Alright, a little context might be required here for my younger and/or international viewers, since I really don't know how much penetration this show ever had outside the US, or if the reruns are actually still a daytime TV staple like they were for guys my age growing up. First, the colloquialisms. The title is a pun. Hillbilly is a not terribly flattering term for people living in isolated rural communities in mountain areas of the United States, mainly the Ozark Mountains and Appalachia. Said communities first entered mainstream consciousness mainly thanks to sensationalized news reporting of the Hatfield-McCoy feud, and were then cemented as permanent objects of pop culture caricature by Al Cap's legendary comic strip Little Abner. Beverly Hills is a wealthy community in California that came to symbolize glamorous opulence in the mid-20th century United States. So then, the title suggests the premise, which went something like this.
Listen to my story about a man named Jed. A poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. And then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground come a bubbling crude oil, that is, black gold, Texas tea. Well, the first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. The kinfolk said, Jed, move away from there. Said, California is the place you ought to be. So they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools, movie stars.
The Beverly Hillbilly.
And yeah, that's the gag. What if a bunch of poor people lived where only rich people are supposed to be? Not exactly politically correct, and yet the show wasn't ever really anything but good-hearted. Certainly not as cruel as the turn the camera on poor and/or stupid people and laugh at them reality TV of today, and the reason why is part of why I think this silly, dated, innocuous little show could be seen as about more than it lets on, and why it stayed so popular for so long. See, the show, which was a half-hour family comedy, pretty much had only two kinds of jokes. The titular hillbillies, that'd be Jed, Jethro, Granny, and Ellie Mae Clampett for the record, misusing and/or otherwise misunderstanding the purpose of some fancy newfangled device, or doing the wrong thing in a situation unfamiliar to them. Here's the thing though, the Clampetts, though not conventionally educated or terribly sophisticated, weren't stupid. Well, okay, Jethro was stupid, but the others, not really. Almost all of the show's humorous misunderstandings came from the Clampetts themselves being too nice, too honest, or too practical. Here's what I mean. Watch this scene from an early episode wherein they try out the billiard table that came with their Beverly Hills mansion.
You could set a half-dozen turkey gobblers on there and never sag it a bit.
This here is a dandy idea, especially if you got young ones at the table. The plates won't slip off on the floor. Here you are, Granny.
Set it in the middle of the table so we'll see if these pot passers reach.
Ha ha, they don't know what a pool table is. But think about why they came to the incorrect conclusion they did. They were assuming all this stuff had to be somehow useful. These are people who'd lived their entire lives under dirt-poor, hand-to-mouth utilitarian circumstances. A whole table and all those sticks just to play some game? That would never occur to them. Those must be for something practical. This informs pretty much all of the misused rich stuff jokes. We've got all this land, of course we raise livestock on it. Of course you use the pool as a bath and stock pond. That much water can't just be for swimming around. This kitchen is so big, of course you put a tub in it. Why waste room? You have to remember that this was airing in the early 60s, the tail end of a prosperous post-war boom wherein American culture encouraged families to prove their own sense of economic security by spending opulently and frivolously. In that context, this cute comedy gimmick was just the teensiest bit subversive. What I'm getting at is, in its own way, this seemingly innocuous little show could be seen as subtly skewering the reigning consumption culture of the day through its basic premise. The whole show is about how comically unnecessary all the trappings of extreme wealth are for the Clampetts, and they're the people you, the audience, are supposed to identify with. So, how much of your day-to-day trappings are kind of unnecessary, Mr. and Mrs. 1960s middle-class America? Now, am I suggesting that some kind of social satire was the actual intended point of the show? No, certainly not. But things that catch on, and this show did, running 9 seasons from 1962 to 1971, tend to do so because they connect with the cultural zeitgeist, whether they mean to or not. Just a few short years after the Clampetts had settled in Beverly Hills, American culture did have a sudden, aggressive reaction against the age of conspicuous consumption, with young people exploring a counterculture that in part romanticized a simpler, down-to-earth way of living, at least symbolically. Sound familiar? Uncle Jed, the first hippie? Probably not. But then, who's really to say? I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.